Well, tomorrow marks exactly 5 months since the Guadalupe River's rapid rise devastated the Texas Hill Country. As people continue to piece their lives back together from the deadly July 4th weekend floods, new reporting from the Texas Tribune and ProPublica reveals leaders in dozens of Texas communities, including Kerr County, turned down state money to create a flood warning system years before this happened. Lexi Churchill, reporter for the Texas Tribune ProPublica investigative unit, is joining us to talk more about this report. Lexi, thanks for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
I want you to start by telling us about the grant program Texas had in place before the flood.
Yeah, absolutely. So this program's called the Flood Infrastructure Fund. Texas lawmakers set this up after Hurricane Harvey back in 2017, essentially to help local governments pay for these flood prevention projects like a flood warning system or other infrastructure projects that are a lot more expensive. So we're talking millions, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases. So the state took a different approach when they decided how they were going to divvy up the money, though. There's some longstanding federal programs that essentially offer all applicants that end up going forward in their programs at least 75% of the cost to cover their project. But Texas took a little bit of a different approach and decided to give folks a mix of grants and loans. Grants are what you really want. That's the money you don't have to pay back. Loans, obviously, you do. And so different applicants are getting different grant amounts, and it comes down a lot of times to what their median household income is in that community.
Yeah. So let's talk about what happened with Kerr County. I think a lot of people who keep up with the legislature will remember, right, how harshly state lawmakers talked to Kerr County leaders during the hearing when they were trying to figure out what happened, what went wrong, and they talked to them because they didn't accept the grant money. But Kerr County leaders say it wasn't just about the money, it just wasn't enough money, right?
Yeah, it was a little more complicated than that. So the flood warning system that they wanted to build in Kerr was about $1 million. The grant that lawmakers offered, or that the state offered through this program, would have paid for 5% of that, which is $50,000. That means they still would have had to pay back $950,000 over the next few decades, which is a lot of money for a small county like Kerr. And there were some other legal complications since it was technically the Upper Guadalupe River Authority, which is a quasi-government agency, essentially. They didn't know if they could use taxpayer dollars to pay back that money through a loan. So there were some other legal complications there, and they essentially only had a matter of weeks to respond to the program and say whether they were going to move forward or not. So it was not a lot of time. They had expected a bigger grant, and so when they got that offer, they didn't have a lot of time to figure out how to move forward, essentially.
Right. 5% is not enough to get it done. I think most people would agree. Your team then learned that Kerr County is not the only county that was rejecting this state's grant money.
Absolutely. So we ended up finding that since the program launched and started taking applications in 2020, there's been at least 90 other local governments that have applied and then decided to turn down the money and walk away. There's a variety of reasons, but we did find about 30 that gave the same reason as Kerr and the Upper Guadalupe River Authority, essentially saying that the grant that they were offered was too small, it wasn't enough for them to go forward, and they couldn't make up the rest of the money.
So let's talk about lawmakers' response. What are they saying about all of this?
So we reached out to lawmakers that are making these decisions, those on that committee you mentioned that are investigating the July floods. Two that we spoke with were really startled by these results and surprised. They didn't know that this many other applicants had turned down the money for similar reasons, and they didn't know that there was $100 million left over from that first round of money that went unused, which is a lot of money that could have paid for a lot of these projects. So in response to those findings, those two lawmakers on the committee essentially said the program needs to be reviewed in the next session to see if what they're doing isn't working, given that so many people are walking away and there's so much money left over.
Yeah, it's a lot of money left over. Like you said, could pay for several projects across the state. All right, Lexi Churchill, reporter for the Texas Tribune ProPublica investigative unit. You guys can find her story at Texas Tribune, their website. We thank you so much for your time today, Lexi.
Thank you.